This is Faith Encouraged with Father Barnabas Powell. Homilies designed to help you live a purposeful and faith-filled life in Jesus Christ. Here's Father Barnabas.
I love the perspective of kids. Now, not always. Sometimes kids are a pain. I don't know if you've ever found that out or not. But sometimes they're a pain. Sometimes they whine. Sometimes they pitch fits. Sometimes they kick their feet on the ground and throw themselves on the ground and act out, all because they didn't get this privilege or this piece of candy. My youngest daughter is addicted to candy. She thinks candy is the best thing that's ever been made in the whole world. And so, throughout the house, because she knows how I feel about candy, she hides it throughout the house. And so invariably I go through the house and I'll look in different places, and sure enough there's a piece of candy that Catherine has socked away in case of emergencies. So I love the perspective of kids. And you know, you don't have to teach a child to be devious, and you don't have to teach a child to sneak. It just seems to come natural to them. I know that because I was a kid myself once. And it is amazing to watch these children grow and develop. But one of the things that I regret is I regret the loss of that spark that exists in children's lives that are so very precious. I bring that up because someone sent me an email this past week and told me a story about a little 5-year-old boy. And this little 5-year-old boy is a precious and precocious little boy. And this man was telling me, he said, "Father, I wanted to send you this note because we've been watching your videos on YouTube. And I'm a recent convert to the Orthodox faith. And my fiancée, who lives 7 hours from me, is now a seeker in the Orthodox faith. So she's seeking to become Orthodox. And she and her little 5-year-old boy were watching your Christmas homily the other day. And she said the little 5-year-old boy was just absolutely amazed at what he was seeing. Because you see, this little 5-year-old boy had never seen an Orthodox church before. He had never seen a priest in vestments. He had never seen the candles and the vigil lamps and all of those things and the icons. He'd never seen any of that before. And so about 5 minutes into the homily, this little boy had just been completely still and completely quiet. Now, I don't know if you know any 5-year-old boys, but that's kind of a rare thing, especially for 5 whole minutes. And so after this 5 minutes had passed, he looked back at his mom and he said, "Mommy, is this man preaching from heaven?" Isn't that fascinating? The perspective of children. This little boy had never seen an Orthodox service before, but he was watching Father Barnabas preach, and this must be heaven. This is what heaven looks like. Perspective, brothers and sisters, changes everything. Today is the day that we recall the exaltation of the Holy Cross, the finding of the Holy Cross in Jerusalem. And it's amazing, the story of the finding of the cross and them bringing the true cross out and exalting it and marching it through the city is an amazing story. Someday I'll tell it to you, or you can read it. It's very, very beautiful. I encourage you to find out about it. But this feast is all about understanding the power of perspective. Because you see, to many of Jesus' day, including his disciples, including the Lord's enemies, the cross represented either defeat or victory. The enemies of Christ thought they had him beat. The friends of Christ thought he had been destroyed. But the power of perspective changes everything. And the challenge that we face today in this world especially in a world like ours today, where our society is continuing to absolutely seem to just lose its mind, where everything is topsy-turvy, up is down, black is white, in is out, and all of the things that are going on in our society, and the fact that we're raising our children in this society. In fact, let me run one rabbit trail real quick. I told a dear lady who had some different opinions about this or that societal thing going on in our society, and I told her, I said, dear lady, here's my biggest problem. Here's my biggest problem with those who believe that we should do these social experiments to change ancient things. I don't know what kind of society this is going to create for my children to grow up in. I don't know what kind of society this is going to create for my grandchildren to grow up in. And if you don't appreciate that perspective of being concerned that so quickly, so willy-nilly, just changing ancient things to fit this or that emotional desire, that danger, that weakness, that poverty is a sickness that will have consequences. And if I'm blind to the potential of those consequences, I run the risk of creating a society for my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and the rest of the world that you and I wouldn't want to live in. So perspective is key. When Jesus dies on the cross, when He suffers on the cross, from our natural perspective, we look at that moment in horror and in turning back. It's ugly. It's messy. Because when they crucified a man in Roman times, they didn't just nail him to a cross. They beat him beforehand. And so the messiness and the ugliness and the depravity and the loss and the shame, because Christ, I mean, you've seen the icons of Christ on the cross. He has the lovely loincloth place there. That wasn't there. In the original, people were crucified naked before the whole world. And so the shame, the pain, the fear, the terror, the unmitigated confusion that this kind of suffering displays invites us to be terrified and to be completely taken aback by this scene that we see unfolding before us. This Jesus Christ, this Lord of glory, this man who claimed to be the Son of God, crucified on a cross. It makes sense that the disciples went into hiding, because they figured since they were His friends, they were going to be next. It makes sense that the enemies of Christ stood at the foot of the cross making fun of Him, giving Him a hard time, making fun of Him and laughing at Him and saying, oh, if you really are the King of the Jews, if you really are the Son of God, come down off the cross and we'll believe in you. Do us a sign and we'll believe in you. Of course, they didn't take into account all the hundreds of signs that He had done before that. And so the challenge of those moments, as the disciples hid and the enemies of Christ gloated, as we look at this scene, we have to ask ourselves, why in heaven's name does the church ask us to exalt the Holy Cross? Why do we sing the hymn, Save, O Lord, your people, and bless your inheritance? Grant victory to the faithful against the adversaries of the faith, and by your holy cross, protect your commonwealth. Why do we sing such a thing? The cross represents crucifixion. The cross represents death. The cross represents suffering. And yet, brothers and sisters, the Orthodox Christian faith invites us to change our perspective. To change our perspective on that which looks horrible, that which looks confusing, that which looks terrifying. Because if God, and through His grace and His mercy, can turn that horrendous scene and that horrendous cross into a symbol of joy and hope and power, If God's grace can turn that cross into something wonderful and powerful and life-changing, may I please ask you, is there any challenge in your life that is beyond the grace of God? If the cross of Jesus Christ can become a symbol of pride and joy and victory, even though how horrible it was, is there anything going on in your life beyond the grace of God? Is there any trouble going on in your life, any question in your life, any pain in your life, any disappointment in your life, any fear in your life beyond the grace of God? If God can do that through the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, what do we say at Pascha? We say at Pascha, Christ is risen from the dead, what? Trampling down death by death, and on those in the tombs bestowing life. This morning, you are invited by the grace of God and the theology of the church and the wisdom of the timeless 20 centuries old Orthodox faith to challenge your perspective about your today, to challenge your perspective about your problems, to challenge your perspective about your fears, your expectations. The grace of God is inviting you today to look at the cross of Jesus and change your perspective. Are you willing to do that today? Can you see the world through God's eyes instead of looking at the world through the eyes of fear or temporariness? Can you base your decisions and your priorities based on an eternal perspective and not on the temporary perspective of he who dies with the most toys wins? Not the temporary perspective of, well, if it feels good, do it. Not the temporary perspective of, well, that just looks like it. That fairness is what we want. By the way, folks, I don't want fairness. I want mercy. Don't give me what I deserve. Give me mercy. And the cross invites you to change your perspective on your life. That's why the church exalts the Holy Cross. That's why the Orthodox faith exalts the Holy Cross. The cross of Jesus Christ is the symbol of victory. By the way, do you know that your brothers and sisters in the Middle East are being persecuted horribly now? And what is the first thing that ISIS does when they go into a Christian village? They destroy the cross. Video after video after video of them sweeping into these areas and destroying crosses on churches and in places because the symbol of the cross speaks to the victory of Jesus Christ over the greatest enemy humanity has, and that's death. And the enemies of the cross don't want that symbol around. So when you wear your cross around your neck, when you receive your cross at your baptism, when you have a cross in your home, it's not just a decoration. It's a testimony that you believe that the eternal perspective of God is more powerful than the temporary perspective of this or that circumstance you may be going through. So I want to challenge you this morning. Allow the cross of Jesus Christ to change your perspective. What was meant to be destructive has become life-giving. What was meant to be filled with fear and disappointment has given hope to the world. What was meant to be a symbol of power has become a testimony of love. The cross of Jesus Christ changes everything, precious angels. Don't live your life without the perspective of the Holy Cross. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Father Barnabas is the priest at the Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene Greek Orthodox Church in Cumming, Georgia. Find out more at faithencouraged.org. That's faithencouraged.org.